This is the hour of Our Demise. The time of nightmares comes to life, and fiends gorging themselves on lost souls. It is the hour in which we will be most sorely tested, more so than even at the time of the fall, when our race was trapped in a spiral of obsession so deep we found the vilest darkness within, and in doing so, triggered the apotheosis of a dark deity, the unslackable goddess, the doom of the Elderai, she who thirsts. Yet that was not the nadir of our empire, not truly. Only now, as the ruinous powers stand on the edge of victory, do we see the truth. The events that tore the heart from our empire were a mortal blow, and one from which we never truly recovered. Yet only now, as the skies burn and the Deathedian bleeds madness across the stars, do we stare into the abyss of total oblivion. In our blindness, we did not see the threat. There are those among us who say through death can be found salvation. They claim to want nothing more than to unite the scattered Elderai race, bringing the children of Asuyan, Segura, and even the living Muse into close accord under the same black banner. Their philosophy is so volatile, its manifestations so terrifying, that they have brought as much strife as they have brought harmony. Though their words are inspiring and full of dark hope, the truth at their core is a single diamond on a swathe of black silk. They believe that through annihilation can be found rebirth. One question abides. What if they are right? Vloku Shea, visionary of Aletok. Though wise men at their end know darkness is right, do not go gentle into that good night. Good men the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. So, the Ynnari burst onto the galactic stage, leaving carnage everywhere they go, a blazing comet across the stars. But how has this affected the tribes of the Elderai they leave in their wake? Let us explore the new information in The Rise of the Phoenix. To quote, The Psychic Awakening, Phoenix Rising, the Hunter Unleashed. The ripples of causality, confusion, and desperate hope that spread through Elderai society caused waves of raw emotion to be reflected in the realm of chaos. Slaanesh, attuned like no other to the echoes of the Elderai soul, peered through hooded eyes at the shifting destiny of that ancient race and began to plan anew. Though all the Elderai loathed and feared Slaanesh, the god they knew as She Who Thirsts had a deep spiritual connection with the Elderai, and it longed for their souls upon their death. So it was that the rise of the Ynnari did not escape Slaanesh's notice. The god of the dead they worshipped, and the lack of vitality it represented was anathema to Slaanesh. Here was a newly rising morbid god that could steal the delicious soul fodder of the Elderai from Slaanesh once and for all. This potential had already been proven beyond a doubt upon Baltan, where the demonic invasion and subsequent shattering of the Infinity Circuit had not yielded the feast of sweet meats Slaanesh had hoped for, but a dry, dusty feeling of absence. Instead of empowering the Dark Prince, all that bountiful soul energy had been given form as the Incarn, avatar of the Whispering God. Upon the chrome world of Belial IV, that same morbid entity had banished a coven of keepers of secrets with an ancient chrome sword. Even the high priestess of this slumbering god had committed soul theft, a crime that no true god could endure. Yvraine had become a walking mausoleum, harboring hundreds of those spirits Slaanesh craved so deeply. The Dark Prince desired to devour her and the Incarn more than any other prey. There was opportunity for Slaanesh in a twisting tide of fate. Many Asuyani, and even self-serving Drukhari, had converted to the cause of Inyad. In embracing Inyad, they were casting aside the shields of self-denial that had served them so well for so long. It was true that should every one of the Eldari give themselves to Inyad, the Whispering God would awaken and Slaaneish's power be broken. But should Yvraine and the Incarn be hunted down and slain, Inyad's tenuous existence would fade into allegory. The Eldari that had stepped away from their precious paths would not reach the afterlife of Inyad at all upon their deaths, but instead topple from their tightropes of self-discipline to plummet into the waiting maw of Slaanesh. There was one creature in Slaaneish's employ that specialized in the killing of demigods and avatars. That being was Shalaxai Hellbane, the monarch of the Hunt. Banished from living memory some 600 years ago by the demon hunters of the Grey Knights, Shalaxi had languished for centuries in the vast and sprawling palace of punishments. Now, with the atonement of that past failure at an end, it was time for the greater demon to rise once more, enter real space and slay the prophets of Inyad. In doing so, Hellbane would earn the favor of the Dark Prince once more. After gathering many old allies, amongst them the vengeful symbiote Sil Eske and a coterie of Slaaneshi heralds, Hellbane entered the webway, 36 fiends trilling in delirious joy behind the war party. The hunt was on. With Salaxi's synesthetic ability to blend a supernatural array of senses, Yvraine's soul trail was soon picked out. Salaxi's loping stride accelerated into a headlong sprint, one that did not slow over time nor halt for rest, for when the will of their patron is behind them, demons do not tire. Dark dreams began to haunt Yvraine's nights. It was upon the dead world of Thresia that Hellbane launched its first vicious attempt upon the Eldari prophet's life. Yvraine was travelling in the company of a war host of Baltan, braving a dash along a chain of webway gates that leapfrogged in quick succession across the executed planets of the Kosael Reach. Hellbane's ambush struck with blistering speed, just as the Eldari host was exiting one such wraithbone portal into a rock valley of lifeless dust and wind-scoured statues. Two spearheads of Slaaneshi demons swept down from the high pass above the valley, one encircling the rear of the Baltan while the other swept around to their fore. Seeker chariots rattled headlong into the Asuryani, their assault so swift that even the whip-cracking craft-worlders could not respond in time. Blood and spinning limbs flew as the sleek war engines drove deep into the Baltan formation. The narrow webway routes the Asuryani followed had prevented them from fielding grav transports. They were thus forced to cut their way out of the ambush on foot. To these faithful Ynnari, Yvraine's life was paramount. As Hellbane cut an unstoppable red path towards the prophet, the host's farseers divided his forces. Screaming their dirge song, a spearhead of howling banshees joined Yvraine in performing a dance of lashing blades that slit a neat hole in the demonic ranks and allowed them to dash up the valley towards the next webway portal. At the same time, the main strength of the Baltan hurled themselves at the Slaaneshi demons. It was a suicidal attack, and Hellbane ripped its way through the Eldari at a ferocious rate. Yet their very deaths empowered Yvraine, even as they proved the devotion of the Ynnari to their cause. Lent impossible speed by the dead souls flowing into her mortal vessel, Yvraine outstripped even the Slaaneshi demons, escaping into the webway and leaving Hellbane raging in her wake. It had been a desperately near thing, but the prophet of Inyad had escaped her hunter, at least for now. Hellbane would not be denied forever, however. The fates of the craft worlds. The Asuryani world ships were caught in the teeth of the tempest that was shaking the cosmos. Some amongst them were steering through the storms and guided their people to places of relative safety. Others faced dark fates or were forced to adapt to near constant war by the strife heralded by the Dethedian. After Ynnari's desperate resurrection of Prince Iriel turned defeat into victory during a demonic attack upon Craftworld Iyanden, they made haste to Makrag, there to bolster humanity's shield against the scourge of chaos. From there they defended a clutch of worlds from the scourge of chaos, but always they were on the lookout for more Eldari sympathetic to their cause. On the proud craft world of Samhan, Yvraine found no small number of converts. The world ship had been sorely pressed since the coming of the Great Rift. At the height of the Blood Crusade, it had sent 5 entire clans to hold back the gore-maddening red tide of Upsilon, securing a fraught victory before disappearing to leave the planet's human survivors shaken and confused behind them. At the same time, the Craft World's fleet had fought void battles against Imperial ships and elements of Abaddon the Spoiler's armada. At first, Yvrane's call to arms was seen as the last thing the seers and chieftains of the Craft World needed. It risked a schism dividing their clans, for tempers on Samhan had always run hot. A council was convened at the Speaking Place, a tribal hub in the midst of one of the Craft World's wilderness zones. Beneath the shimmering vault of a colossal biodome, they talked of ancestors, spirits, and futures yet to be. For a while, they found accord around the ever-burning fires of that place. Then the skies shimmered above the conflagration, and a Drukhari strike force burst from a webway gate long forgotten. Their intent was to slay Yvrane with a swift, decapitating strike. The Drukhari's blades did not find their mark, for none other than the Phoenix Lord Jane Zar appeared to meet them in battle. The peace talks turned to fierce battle in moments, and the Ynnari were forced to flee. Meantime, the craft world of Alatok was preoccupied with its own missions and agendas, even with the sky stained with the lifeblood of the cosmos and the signs of chaos appearing in nigh every vision and prophecy. The Puritan leaders of the world ship espoused their long-held belief that it was the Necrontyr who posed the greatest threat to the galaxy at large. They had scryed the unraveling threads of the future in their own way and found a geometric void that threatened to swallow all. Alatok's foremost visionary, Iluko Shay, had written the prophecy of risen doom, while half-conscious in a fever dream, the intensity of the vision all but crippling her. Though it had taken her a lifetime to isolate the strand of potentiality that led to her worst nightmare, she had found it just the same, and it was of shocking potency. Shay had brought her latest findings to the Seer Council of Alatok, singing of the Sea of Dead Stars at the climax of the hearing. Sobered by the vista she painted, they accelerated their plans to allay the threat of the Necrons before their ancient enemies fully awoke, even though they drastically weakened their craftworld's defenses as a result. In doing so, they destroyed the Hyrek dynasty on the very day of its ascension, killing the Necrons with systematic overlapping strikes while they still clawed their way from the slumber of stasis. With the Pathfinder Illic Night Spirit as their ambassador, they dealt extensively with the Harlequins of the Frozen Stars, whose agenda aligned with their own. In doing so, they found that they had scratched the surface of a far larger threat. Even as they fought the Necrontyr in a dozen new fronts, the strike forces of Alatok were ambushed by the terror legions of the Saneshe Greater Demon, Slithar. The Daemon Monarch intended to strike at Alatok while it was vulnerable, yet found that the information network provided by the Craftworld's Ranger cliques made it all but impossible to execute. Every time Slithar sent steed-riding demonettes on a mission of reconnaissance, they were picked off by pinpoint sniper fire that banished them back to the Imperium before they could report back to their masters. With the Pathfinders of Alatok leading their rangers in dozens of wars across the Imperium Sanctus, that region of the Imperium that remained upon the Terran side of the Great Rift and was still illuminated by the light of the Astronomicon, the main body of Craftworld Alatok was left free to take the fight to the Necrons of the Eastern Fringe. Craftworld Baltan had its fate intrinsically linked with the precarious rise of the Ynnari. Since the sundering of the wraithbone endoskeleton that formed its infinity circuit, the moon-sized Elroi worldship had slowly broken up into its constituent parts. Now Baltan was more a fleet than a single ship, its strength almost halved by the turmoil that started upon the corrupted paradise world of Esulia. They had reached the point of civil war by their fracture and the division that Yvrane had brought onto them. For a good portion of those lost to Baltan had followed her lead to become Ynnari, further worsening the already reeling Craftworld situation. Self-belief was their salvation, a quality that the remaining Asuyani held as one of the highest of all virtues. Its people, fierce optimists one and all, believed the Eldari Empire would rise like a phoenix from the ashes of near extinction. Baltan was soon to show its strength, making a virtue of its ability to spread its power across a wider area than ever before. During the Chaos invasion of the trio of Exodite worlds known as the Three Sisters, Baltan was led to war by three of the legendary Phoenix Lords, Baharoth, Fugan, and Karandras. Both Baharoth and Thugan were welcomed with fierce joy, for the coming of but one of Azuyan's pupils was cause for intense celebration, let alone two. But when Karandras revealed himself mid-battle upon Khazar, to cut a bloody swathe through a wedge of demon cavalry, a ripple of unease undercut the Azuyani feeling of jubilation at his arrival. It was prophesied that at the time of the Ranadandra, the final apocalyptic battle against Chaos that would spell the doom of everyone and everything, all 6 Phoenix Lords would fight together, with 3 become 6, showing the time of ending to be close at hand. With the 3 Phoenix Lords working together at the fore, Baltan levelled the sword wind with such vengeful ferocity the demon hosts were broken and destroyed. In the weeks that followed, the human cultists upon nearby Khazar, whose ritual-practicing leaders had conjured the demons into real space in the first place, were killed. The rest of the planet's population was slain by a psychic tempest unleashed by a conclave of farseers and warlocks that scoured their world clean of every last living thing. It was a display of power that lit the flame of war in the broken heart of Baltan once more. The leaders of Baltan learned much from the Exodite kings of the Three Sisters. Conversely, many of the Maiden World's youthful warriors were entranced by the sight of the Phoenix Lords. Through these legendary leaders, many young and vital Exodites were convinced that their aid was of paramount importance. The hour was so dire that the Eldari race had to call upon every blade it could muster. Though their lieges raged at the betrayal, the young Exodites rode to war alongside the Swordwind. Just as the Baltani had worked tirelessly to defend the Maiden Worlds of their former empire, now the Exodites would repay the debt in kind. Ulthway's Mercy. The Asuyani of Craftworld Ulthway were known as the Damned, for they had fought against Chaos for far too long. Their methods were not always direct, as the Imperium found out to its cost. The Scryers of Ulthway were masters of foresight, and had read disasters in the stars long before the coming of the Great Rift. Even with all their artifice, these arch-manipulators were unable to allay the doom that was unfolding before them, only to mitigate its true and terrible potential. Priding themselves on their subtlety, the Ulthway Eldari tipped the scales of conflict where they could, aiding the lesser races against the forces of Chaos in 100 different war zones across the Segmentum Obscurus. It was their High Farseer, Eldrad, who was behind the massing of the Crystal Seers and the events on Coheria that saw Iniad shift in his slumber. For millennia, the Seer Council of Ulthway had masterminded the defense of the Eye of Terror and its surrounding planets, holding back the tide of Chaos until Abaddon's alliance of Chaos saw it finally torn apart. But perhaps their greatest coup was ensuring Yvraine reached the shrine of Hera upon Macragge, first by a grand ritual that saw her born across time and space, and then by force of arms when the Black Legion attempted to stop them. In this, they allowed Yvraine to tear Reboot Gilliman from the brink of death. Upon Macragge, the Daughter of Shades used Iniad's power to give the Primarch a new lease of life, combining Eldari insight with Adeptus Mechanicus artifice to sustain the Primarch indefinitely. That act saw the Imperium of Man redefined. With the Primarch given aid enough to reach the Emperor's palace upon Terra, the governance of humanity's realm taken over by the one soul with mental strength and logistic skill enough to hold it together. Humanity was given the wherewithal to hold back the tide of Chaos, for a time at least. Though they had done so by methods so indirect that none suspected their intervention, the Seers of Ulthway had created a shield against the scourge of Chaos so broad and so strong it had borne the weight of 100 invasions and still not shattered. Yet even the finest bulwark will fall apart under the relentless tide, and even Ulthway was not infallible. The Scryers of Ulthway sifted the visions that entered their minds when they let their consciousness drift along the landscape of the future, picking out those fault lines where a concerted attack could shatter their plans. Some of those imperial plans they watched over were corrupt, their masters looking after only their own interests as their cities and people burned around them. On these, the Osweians resorted to that most desperate of all actions: direct intervention. Planetary governors and councillors who were too corrupt or slow-witted to stop their people from falling to chaos were attacked by Black Guardian war hosts and stealthy aspect warrior forces who slew the leaders of each failing enterprise. In this, the craft world ensured its target's replacement, usually with more competent individuals inspired to proactivity by the shocking demise of their predecessors. The worlds the Oswey attacked found themselves ruled capably once more, each planet a strong link in a chain that would hold back the tide of chaos for a little longer. The Adonis Palace Massacre. The culling of imperial incompetence was not a plan without cost in Eldorei lives. Merciless indeed were the methods of Oswey's Seer Council, for they prized speed and efficacy over slow and often fruitless diplomacy. This was especially true on the planet Cadmus Tertius, site of the Adonis Palace Massacre. The first the Adonites knew of the Azagnani attack was the sudden appearance of a squadron of Hemlock Wraith fighters, escorted by Crimson Hunters from the Shrine of the Shrieking Squall. Descending from a shimmering, psychically formed cloud, the Black Hemlocks threaded their way through a hail of anti-aircraft fire. In places they lost precious psychopilots to the sheer weight of fire, but the remainder bombarded the spire tips of the ruling cities with waves of crippling despair, so intense they caused mass suicides within. The strike stopped a ritual of summonation performed by the narcissistic rulers of the planet, a grand spell of profane luxury intended to bring Slaaneshi demons into reality. In doing so, the assault prevented a split in real space that would have seen Cadmus Tertius infested by warp spawn and later condemned to exterminatus at the decree of the Imperium's Inquisition. The planet's demise had been averted just in time, but those Eldorei emissaries who were sent to point this out to the new rulership were sent away at gunpoint. Instead of being welcomed as saviors, the black-clad Orthweians were called murderers and accused of grand regicide. Tempers flared and harsh words exchanged. Though the Eldorei left, the matter was far from over. The Adonites' replacements proved untainted by chaos, though they were now hell-bent on taking revenge against the Eldorei. Under a false flag of parley, Adonis's naval resources approached the Asuryani, who were still monitoring them in real space. Hugely outnumbered, several Orthwei ships were blasted apart before the rest could slip into the darkness of the void, cursing the short-sighted nature of the humans they had given valuable lives to save. The Wrath of Komorrah. The hidden realm of Komorrah had been shaken to its foundation by the coming of the Deathedian and the warpquake that Yvraine had brought into its heart. Asdrubal Vecht was out for revenge. The supreme overlord of Komorrah had found himself in something of a quandary. The rise of Yvraine and her transformation at the Crucible Arena into the High Priestess of Iniad had triggered a metaphysical invasion that had allowed Daemon legions to spill into his artfully created city. Vecht had isolated and effectively quarantined that invasion at great cost. Even now, that warp gate and its infernal spawn gnawed at the sub-realms, conjured to hold it back. It was a great loss he would not ignore, and an insult he could not be seen to excuse. Vecht could not strike directly at the Inari himself, however. To do so would be to acknowledge he considered them a threat. He worked instead through puppets and whispersmiths, laying intrigue and rumors atop one another until cabals, covens, and witch cults alike moved against Ynnari without ever realizing that they did so at Vecht's behest. Some sought to directly assail those Ynnari dwelling within the fractured realm of Komorrah, and in so doing weaken or cast doubt upon Yvraine's cause. Such was the intent of Marquis Vulkir, of the Lords of the Iron Thorn. By subtle whispers and shadowy missives it came to the Archon's attention that his hated rivals, the Cabal of the Poisoned Hopes, had converted to Ynnari and were gathering fresh recruits to their fortress in the Howling Spire. Volkir saw here a chance to eliminate his own long-time foes and give the appearance of making war upon the Inari without expending time and resources hunting down Yvraine herself. Thus he unleashed his kill squads in a sudden and devastating assault upon the Howling Spire. Spearheads of Gravcraft slid through the green-lit gloom around the spire, staying low amidst the lambent fog so that their sails cut through the fume like the fins of oceanic predators. At the last moment, some eldritch alarm warned the Inari of the approaching threat. The Howling Spire's defense guns spat dark light and hails of splinters, and in response Grand Impellers screamed and the Lords of Iron Thorn burst up from the mist cover to attack. Lance blasts ripped back and forth as Ravagers jinked and wove, their gunners hammering the Howling Spire's defenders. Drukhari were atomized by energy beams that would have sundered tanks. Others toppled from the spire's flanks, their bodies riddled with toxic needles or bound in restrictive webs of thorned metal. Return fire saw more than one gunship or transport explode in mid-air, shedding screaming bodies as its wreckage plummeted. However, striking fast and unheralded, the Iron Thorn swept the spire's lower galleries clear of defenders and landed a massive raiding party. They were met by a ferocious countercharge. The ragged alliance of Cabalites and witches who had flocked to the Inari banner fought back with the determination of true zealots. The Lords of Iron Thorn wavered as they found their opponent fighting with an unfettered death madness even their pain-heightened reactions could not keep a pace with. For long moments the battle hung in the balance, a blistering blur of violence engulfing every stairwell, walkway and torture chamber in the spire. Then came Marquis Volkir himself. Whilst his foes were focused on the threat pushing up from below, he and his hand-picked Trueborn bodyguard had blasted their way into the spire's upper chambers, slain Archon Lesh of the Poisoned Hope, and now fell upon the Inari from behind. Caught between two foes, hammered from without by the fire of the circling gunships, the Inari of the Howling Spire were annihilated. This was but one example of the internecine warfare that erupted anew as disgusted or furious Drukhari turned upon the deviant death cultists in their midst. Yet though the devotees of Inyad found themselves beset, they were far from defenseless. Conflict and violent rivalry is the norm in Khormorah. This fresh schism was but one more reason for the Drukhari to tear at one another. So it was that several sub-realms were claimed by pro-Inari factions, fortified against assault, and became separatist enclaves in their own right. The message of Inyad spread slowly through Khormorah, but despite Vex's best efforts, spread it did. This was not Vex's only plan, of course. Through third-party brokers he offered impossibly rich rewards for Yvraine's severed head, and so spurred dozens of hunting parties and feral mercenaries to take up the Prophet's trail. Perhaps the deadliest such hunting party was led by Drazar, Master of Blades. By following Yvraine to the sacred debating fires of Craftworld Samhan and striking from a hidden webway portal, Drazar got his blade a hand's breadth from the High Priestess's neck. The kill strike was parried at the last moment by Jane Zar herself. The running battle that followed saw Azuyani, Ynnari, and Drukhari clash in a series of engagements that took them to the ancient ruins of the Eldari Empire and beyond. Skilled as she was, Jane Zar could not overcome Drazar in combat. For where she was a leader as well as a warrior, Drazar was devoted to blademanship alone. But Jane Zar had pledged her power to the Ynnari, and with Inyad's grace upon her, she fought with uncanny speed and skill to defend Yvraine. It appeared that even a mastermind such as Vecht, allied with a near-mythical warrior such as Drazar, could not engineer Yvraine's death. The Whispering God had use for his High Priestess still, and he would not be denied. The Godry falsehood. Many of the homunculi that made their lair in the lower regions of Khormorah were old allies of Vecht's. They were so steeped in the history of the Dark City, so influential in their control of the Drukhari's sham immortality, that they sought to maintain the status quo from which they had profited so many centuries. The prophets of flesh, those who studied under the demented flesh sculptor Urian Rakath, had devised a new punishment, to take a transgressor and reshape them, melding their mortal clay until they looked, walked, and even smelled like a human being. All Drukhari found this horrifying, for to them a human form was ungainly and ape-like, a cruel mockery of a biped in comparison to the lithe and alabaster-skinned Eldorei anatomy. This was a horrific punishment for a people so vain and haughty as the Drukhari, and those subjected to the treatment cried out that they would do anything at all to have it reversed. In these false humans, Vex saw opportunity, one so twisted and sadistic that Yuri and Rakarth agreed to orchestrate it on his behalf. On the Slab-Creed planet of Godri's Sekhmet, Ivrain preached Ynnari Creed to a hidden gathering of Aletok pathfinders high in the peaks. The Eldorei did not expect any of the dull-witted humans who infested the planet to uncover the location of their eyrie, and Ivrain was speaking with such passion and fervour that all eyes were upon her. Hence, when the Imperial military announced their presence with a well-organised Astra Militarum pincer assault, the Eldorei found their line of retreat cut off by artillery fire. The Ynnari and Aletokai fell back to the webway portal by which they had made planetfall upon Godri Sekhmet, only to find a strike force of Drukhari mercenary elites bursting through. Caught between the hammer of the Drukhari assault and the anvil of the Astra Militarum, amongst whose ranks were Vex false humans who had engineered the attack, the Ynnari were decimated. Only the manifestation of the Incarn summoned to battle by so much death in one place allowed the command structure of Ynnari to break through and make their escape into the webway. Iyanden Reborn. The embattled craftworld Iyanden had come close to having its flames snuffed out altogether. With the threat of chaos writ large, its situation was made all the more precarious. In the Ynnari, the craftworld saw a final chance to reverse their fortunes. Time was running out for craftworld Iyanden. In living memory, it had weathered vicious attacks from Chaos Armadas, endured headlong assaults from psychotic Orc warlords, and repelled the incursion of a major tendril of High Fleet Kraken. Then came Nekisha. Even as the empiric darkness of the Noctis Eterna clawed at the galaxy, this rapacious keeper of secrets employed its reality-bending energies to force passage into one of Iyanden's precious biodomes. Asuyani reeled back in horror as a glowing rent 100 feet high split the skin of reality amidst the dome's beautiful glades, and from within spelled the unfettered madness of the warp. Cornate blood crushers and packs of flesh hounds loped out to hunt screaming Eldorei through the trees like game. Greater demons of Nurgle lumbered through their lovingly cultivated woodlands, chortling wetly as riotous rot spread out from them in all directions, and waves of plague-bearers trudged, droning their endless count through the resultant mulch. Trilling Slaaneshi demons danced and span, meeting incoming squads of guardians, aspect warriors and wraithguard with deadly balletic grace, and plucking out spirit stones like sweetmeats, while discs and screamers of Sinch whipped overhead, their riders cackling madly and raining fire down on friend and foe alike. First one biodome fell, then another, before the demons spilled out into the craftworld's labyrinthine interior to rampage at will. The autarchs and seers of Iyanden led their fight back with a desperate intensity, wielding phalanxes of ghost warriors like blades to cut through the swift sprouting thickets of madness engulfing their craft world. Yet they knew it was a losing fight, for their enemies were an ocean, and the already depleted Eldorei ranks were not enough to stem the tide. It was the seeing craft of their cousins that saved Iyanden in that hour. Just as all seemed lost, a coalition of harlequins and war hosts from a half-dozen other craft worlds plunged into the fight. They had braved the horrors of the Noctis Eterna, suffering no small cost for doing so, and ridden to Iyanden's aid at the 11th hour. Combined, the Eldorei forces were able to first contain the demonic infestation, and then to eradicate it one chamber, hall and corridor at a time. A conclave of seers at last succeeded in closing the warp rift, and, without their source of power, the daemons flickered and faded. Yet there was little enough cause for celebration. Iyanden had been forced to rely upon others to ensure its survival yet again, and the allied Eldorei forces parted ways with no little bitterness and sense of mutual resentment. When Ivrain brought news of the Ynnari Creed to Iyanden, she was at first spurned. Yet when a Nurgle naval assault followed her arrival, it was Ivrain's summons to her old Corsair allies that saw the Chaos invasion blunted. Prince Iriel took the chance to lead a boarding action against the spawn of Organothere, flagship of the demon prince Garagulgulgor, and he struck with such deadly confidence that he penetrated right to the ship's heart. Plunging the Spear of Twilight into the ship's pulsing enginarium, he destroyed the half-sentient flagship from within. In return, he was dealt a mortal blow, Garagulgulgor smashing him with a heavy girder that killed him in a single strike. Uriel's body was recovered and brought back to Iyanden. Unfortunately, the angel of Iyanden, Iana Arianel, saw virtue in Ivrain's creed and let her into Iriel's mausoleum. There the priestess burned out the plague with the energies of death and resurrected the prince with the power of rebirth. Once again, Iyanden had been forced to rely on others for its salvation, but this time those saviors came with promise and proof there could be another way. Debate raged among the Craftworld spirits in the wake of Ivrain's action. Many argued that if the Yanari had the power of rebirth, and numbered Drukhari as well as Asuyani, then their combined mastery of body and soul could be enough to cross the river of death unmolested, denying Slaanesh in the process, only to emerge to a new life on the other side. A plan of vaunting ambition took form among the Craftworld's Council of Elders, though others decried it as madness. The Arianal hypothesis hinged on the fact that the Asuyani already had a safe haven in the form of their Infinity Circuit. Providing they mobilized sufficient ghost warriors to protect it, could not the entire Craftworld cross the threshold of death? And if that was the case on one Craftworld, could the rest of them follow suit at the same time? Iana Arianal argued that Drukhari had ways to regrow physical forms wholesale from scraps of dead flesh, and that once the danger had passed, the Eldari souls could return to the bodies of flesh and blood, having cheated Slaanesh and empowered Inyad. Yet they could build their society anew, shorn of the spiritual curse that had haunted them these 10 millennia. It was a strong theory, but should it be proven fallible in practice, it could see the Craftworld themselves shattered from the inside out. If the Yanari were not there to absorb their spiritual essences, they would give Slaanesh a feast of souls like no other since the days of the Fall. Long did the Dome of Crystal Seers resound to the sound of impassioned argument, with no one faction able to sway the other. Far beyond the biodome's crystal shell, a glowing emerald circle grew ever larger. They neared the planet of Lathglass, site of a grand confluence of fate. There, Iyanden would fight as the champion of death itself. Laughing in the face of death, many Harlequins saw a dark mirth in the dilemma presented to them by the Yanari, for they saw themselves as already saved. Yet the opportunity to defeat Slaanesh forever was compelling indeed. The Harlequins had their own parts to play in the unfolding fate of the Eldari. They had long opposed Slaanesh, and some among them had already thrown their lot in with the Inari. Some had linked the rise of the Inari to the prophecy from the crystal tome of Segara, unchanged since the cataclysmic demise of the planet Duriel. That Eldritch book's last pages implied that Slaanesh's strength could not only be defeated, but turned against itself. Some Harlequins said that to place their hopes, and their very souls, into the hands of a god yet to manifest was to walk across an abyss on a razored tightrope, or to dive breathless to the bottom of an ocean in the hope of finding a specific pearl. Yet even in the direst adversity, faith can thrive. As with the Craftworlds of the Asuyani, the great troops of the Harlequins each had their own agendas and philosophies, and they did not always mesh well. Rather than get lost in debate, they simply acted upon their own initiatives. The Mask of Dreaming Shadow joined forces with Craftworld Alatok, voyaging to the galactic south in order to thwart the rising Necron threat, for they deemed it a more immediate peril than the implacable thirst of Slaanesh. The Mask of the Midnight Sorrow aligned themselves closely with Ivrain, as did the Loose Brotherhood of the Death Jesters. They worked amongst every troop to keep the notion of Inyad alive, for they believed this to be to bring a god of the dead to prominence, and thereby destroy their ancient nemesis through the demise of that which had given it birth would be the finest jest of all. Segara's Chosen had never worn the spirit stones of the Asuyani upon their chests. They believed that in return for utter devotion, the Laughing God would take them unto himself upon their deaths. In this, they had a similar theology to the Inari. They too had conviction enough to brave the perils of the galaxy on their own terms, without safeguards and crystalline spirit stones to protect them. Indeed, there are some among their number, known as the Solitaires, who voluntarily walked the path of damnation, playing the part of Slaanesh in the ancestral plays of the Harlequins, and devoting their lives to defeating that unholy power. It was these Solitaires that Yvraine sought amongst her Harlequin allies, for she had witnessed one such warrior dueling a keeper of secrets upon Belial IV, and his skill had left a deep impression upon her. Even then, she suspected that to secure the aid of a Solitaire would not be enough. The demonic hunter that had struck at Yvraine upon Thracia, and that she kept seeing in her recurring dreams, had proved unstoppable, both in reality and in every somnolent vision. In Yvraine's dreams, first the Vizarch, then the Incarn, was cut to ribbons by the demon's assaults. Then the Ynnari she had come to trust were slashed apart, impaled or pierced. Yvraine was last, the demon visiting a true death upon her that would see Yvraine's body crumble to ash and her soul swallowed whole by she who thirsts. It seemed a fate inescapable. Yvraine still held out a slender hope nonetheless, for in the latest of her recurring nightmares she was lucid enough to conjure the finest warriors of Inari, Azuyani, Harlequins, and Dukari to mind. And in the phantom battles of her dreams that proved enough to defeat the mighty demon. The message was clear. Together they would epitomize the most powerful aspects of the Eldari psyche and prove in microcosm that the Eldari could defeat their hated enemy in this world and the next. Yvraine began to gather her champions, those warriors who could be considered preeminent amongst the subcultures of the Eldari race. The Vizarch was already at her side as ever. He would defend her with his life. The Incarn would answer her summons should enough deathly energies saturate the battlefield. As for the Azuyani, she already had the one stalwart protector, one who had always proved willing and able to defend her, in the form of Jaina Zar. Lilith Hesperex had also sided with the Inari in exchange for a promise of eternal puissance. And with the vector of immortality at risk of permanent death, the succubus could be convinced to fight alongside the Daughter of Shades out of enlightened self-interest. But there was one problem that stood between Yvraine and her intended scheme. Solitaires. Spending the most part of their lives in costume as civilians of the Eldari race, were masters in the art of disguise. Securing the aid of one of Segara's chosen would be next to impossible. In dreams there came an answer, a pair of souls that Yvraine had perceived in her visions, searing through the threads of fate like a pair of binary stars, burned brighter indeed. One was an Eldari soul, the other a human psyche of incredible power, and both were getting closer with every passing day. When Yvraine had been at her meditations upon the relic world of Iachi, the Vizarch came to her, bowing his head and resting his forehead upon the pommel of the Sword of Silent Screams. He spoke of two exceptional individuals who sought audience with her. One was a handsome Eldari with two long blades upon his back, and the other a human female in black power armor and whose hair was a shock of white. The latter was possessed of a psychic aura so powerful it stung the mind. The Eldari visitor, an exile from the favour of Segara, told Yvraine of a fresh cataclysm to come. The human female spoke of a hidden foe and a force that would turn stars and souls black. Yvraine appeared to listen well, for the language of prophecy had become well known to her, but in reality she was focused only on the fate of the Inari. She agreed to lend the aid that the mysterious Eldari requested of her, though she did not say when. In return, she bade the exile seek out those Harlequins of his former kin, ensuring that a solitaire was found before it was too late. The deal agreed, the strange pair conjured a shimmering portal and stepped into the twilight between worlds once more. Hope and despair entwine. Through means both psychic and mundane, Yvraine had carefully sown the seeds of her plan throughout the subcultures of the Eldari race. Every iota of her influence had been bent towards mustering for war at an old haunt of hers, for there, on Iathglas, she would meet again the inescapable predator that sought to take her head. The journey to Iathglas was fraught with warp storms. Those who approached through the webway found the strange translucent tunnels echoing to distant howls, whilst in space, veteran helmsmen were tested to their limits. In this the Eldari saw a sign that they were on the right path. Some even claimed that the storms were Slaanesh's influence trying to hold them back. Sure enough, in places the ships were lost, becalmed or set upon by heretic Astartes, but the dauntless survivors forged through every obstacle laid in their path. Vast, lambent and surrounded by a triad of dark moons, Iathglas was a paradise world in orbit around the reddish star of Miagu. Yvraine remembered the planet well, from her time as a Corsair queen. She had used it as a safe haven when hiding from her enemies in the Segmentum Pacificus. Iathglas was beautiful to the naked eye, but when observed with the witch sight, its spiritual importance became clear. A central world shrine formed the heart of the planet's psychic nervous system. Yvraine made haste to the largest of their number, knowing that there she would find the Exodites she sought, for they had always been fiercely protective of their world shrine. There the souls of all the departed Exodites from that maiden world rested in a psychic gestalt, a loose geomantic equivalent of an infinity circuit. It was this reservoir of spiritual energy that Yvraine intended to use as a shield against the inevitable, that hour when Slaanesh's hunt arrived. Amidst great formality she greeted the Exodite chiefs she had befriended in her former life, as a Corsair Amharok. Eventually, the chiefs said that they would not support Yvraine's plans, but neither would they stand in the way of it. Over the last few months, those messengers Yvraine had sent abroad into the cosmos had reached their intended targets and, braving the dangers of darkening galaxy, those she summoned had answered her call. More Eldari had gathered upon Iathglas of their own volition, their farseers reading the skeins of the unwinding fate, and either sending delegations in their stead, or else coming to the world themselves, at the head of powerful war hosts. Some of the delegations made landfall around the planet's world shrine, and there soon fell to debate the course of the Eldari race. Autarchs, homunculi, shadowseers, and many other Eldari leaders delivered impassioned speeches or argued vociferously, though they came no closer to reaching an accord. Other parties hung back, groups such as the Cabal of the Obsidian Rose or the Mask of the Frozen Stars kept their own counsel as they wandered Iathglas's wilds or lurked in orbit over the planet. All had come to answer the call of fate, and to effect the confluence of causality they knew was developing on Iathglas, but few saw the exact same outcome to this strange conclave. Yvraine had expected such division, just as she had expected those who had chosen the path of Inia to come to her when she called. Jane Zar, Leith Hesprax, a troop of the Midnight Sorrow, including their cursed but deadly solitaire, a fleet of corsairs who hung in orbit, silent and ready. All answered Yvraine's summons and attended her in person, as she staged her own muster near the world shrine itself. Doom approached, Yvraine knew, but if she could defeat her fate with the aid of such an alliance of Eldari factions, she would perhaps provide her arguing race with an example that spoke louder than words. Tense, ready, she waited for fate to run its course. On the 6th hour of the 6th day of the 6th week since Yvraine's arrival, word came of demonic incursions. An Exodite rider, mounted on a swift saurian beast and sorely wounded, rode hard into the clearing where Yvraine's army had gathered. He talked in panicked tones of a great massacre near the equatorial Faneway. A towering demon had led the invasion force, and it could not be stopped by Exodite, Asuryani, or Drukhari alike. Even as the Exodite messenger succumbed to his wounds, the sky shimmered dark. The wind, howling through the trees, rose to a bone-chilling shriek. Suddenly, a rain of sickly sweet fluid pelted down, robbing visibility as the squall lashed the forest inside and out. Then, amongst the trees, a flicker of purple light flared, and the demon known as Shalaxi Hellbane strode from the verdant wilderness. Hellbane advanced alone, prowling like a great hunting felide towards its prey. Yet the very visions that Yvraine had been tormented by for so long finally proved worth enduring. She had seen this moment many times, knew what came next by heart, and had already put orders in place for a coordinated response. Asuryani warriors and skimming tanks darted toward the southern edge of the clearing. Drukhari witches and harlequins towards the north. They slammed headlong into surprised packs of Slaaneshi demons that had been able to spring forth in ambush. Ruby lances of laser fire stabbed down from the Corsair fleet in order to tear blazing holes in the forest canopy and annihilate more of the unnatural invaders. The demons' numbers were great, however, and they delighted in agony and risk as much as they thrilled at bloodshed and victory. Undeterred, Hellbane's vastly swollen hunting pack fought back. Vicious gunfights, running skirmishes, and lightning-fast duels erupted all along the tree line around the clearing. Meanwhile, 5 champions ran to meet the demon, 5 souls burning bright against the living furnace of dark energy. Lilith Hesperax sprinted towards Hellbane with jaw-dropping speed, knives bared, teeth glinting in a cruel smile. Ivrain and the Vizark followed close behind, crone swords drawn. Behind Hellbane, the Solitaire somersaulted from the canopy in a blur of glimmering diamonds, whilst Jane Zar charged front and centre, her war shout rising. The fight that ensued was the stuff of legend. Hellbane was isolated from the wide-eyed demon horde by the determined battle lines of Elderai, who braved annihilation to launch one tactical riposte after another amidst the rain of Corsair fire. No other race could have dared such a precise and potentially disastrous style of warfare, fighting in concert and perfect synchronicity. The Azuyani, Dukari and Harlequins wove a dance of death between the searing energy columns that fell from the heavens and gutted every demonic assault before it could break through the Elderai lines. The fate of the conflict would be decided by the duel between Hellbane and Ivrain's champions. Upon the world of Eathglass, at the heart of a blood-spattered clearing near the planet's shimmering world shrine, a demonic hunter battled the Daughter of Shades and her chosen champions. War raged all around them. Everywhere the Elderai fought as one against the daemons of Slanesh, and the duel in the clearing took place as though at the heart of a violent storm. Beneath the crimson light of Miagu, they fought, the demon's claws and whip-like tendrils engaging all 5 champions at once. Lilith's deadly knives stabbed up at its face, but were blocked by the creature's shining aegis. Ivrain cut through one tentacle whip with her crone sword, only to find another of the vile things wrapping her wrist. The Midnight Solitaire stabbed his Harlequin's kiss between Hellbane's exposed ribs, the device hissing as its monomolecular wire unspooled. Hellbane merely shivered as if in ecstasy, then snipped the Segura warrior bodily in half. The hilt of the daemon's deadly long spear came around to catch Jane Azar's midriff as she was mid-leap. The blow should have broken her spine, but the Phoenix Lord channeled the energy of the dying Elderai beneath her just as Ivrain had taught her. Jane Azar gave vent to a war shout and levelled a spinning slash from her own polearm that cut the daemon's brow to blind it with its own ichor. Hellbane staggered back, shield and pseudopods raised in defence, hissing in outrage.
"Slash you!"
the demon spat, and Ivrain heard true disgust in the thing's voice.
"That soul was not yours to take."
Too late, Ivrain realised the weakness was feigned, the angry words a distraction. The Vizark kept his sword two-handed for a kill strike. Hellbane flipped its spear high as it blocked the blow, then deftly caught the Vizark's blade between finger and thumb. It yanked him forwards, so the falling spear impaled him from collarbone to shin. At the same time, a claw lunged out for Ivrain. She felt a gouging mass of pain in her neck as the grasping pincer tore away half her throat. Blood spurted. She fell. Her vision turned black. Hellbane's whispered syllables crowded into her mind. The energies of Inyad were being torn from her by some horrific warp spell. True death was near. From this, there would be no coming back. As Ivrain's back touched the ground, she felt a great swell of invigorating energy pour into her from the virgin soil beneath. Iathgas's world spirit had need of her still. The Daughter of Shades regained her senses as a great burst of scintillating energy flowed from her, only to see the Vizark's corpse topple into a mound of dead leaves. Where he fell, the Incarn burst from the ground, given terrible animus. It screamed in triumph as it drank in the deathly energies of the corpses strewn around the clearing, then launched itself at Hellbane. The giant demon creatures dueled like gods, blades flashing in the red twilight. A blow landed from the Incarn's great crone sword. Hellbane struck back hard, its spear piercing the Incarn's chest, but the grinning rictus on the avatar's face merely widened. It clutched the spear like a lover's gift, locking it in place. Ivrain leapt, her sword slashing the demon's midriff, even as Jane Azar's gleaming polearm burst from the centre of its chest. A moment later, Lilith's blades found their mark in the creature's eyes. With a piercing shriek, the demon shimmered, its form wavering, beginning to dissipate. "The demon is banished," cried Yvraine, dropping to her knees beside the Vizark and then channeling the energies of rebirth to knit his ruptured form. She felt a fierce sense of vindication at the victory of her assembled champions. Surely, she thought, the metaphor of such a combined victory over she who thirsts would not be lost upon her kin. From the clearing's edge came shouts of triumph, as the surviving Eldrai saw their foes flicker and fade. The hunting party banished along with their leader. There would be sorrow for the losses suffered that day, thought Yvraine, but those who would do Inead's will need to understand that. Cruel laughter cut across her thoughts. Yvraine's blood turned to ice as she realized the voice was Hellbane's. She looked up to see her bloodied champions spinning, raising their blades anew as the demon's form shuddered back into focus, though it remained ephemeral as the gossamer mists at dawn. Janazar struck, yet her blade cut air as if the demon was not there at all. "Because you are not truly here, are you?" asked Yvraine, exhaustion and frustration making her voice leaden. Hellbane's lips quirked into a cruel and predatory smirk.
"No more than a glamour, quarry mine," it purred. "Solid enough to give good sport, and to test your strength, but only an echo of my true essence."
"Why?" asked Yvraine, hearing murmurs of dismay spreading through the assembled Eldari. What? She could hear them asking, had they fought for here? Had they simply been playthings for she who thirsts? Yvraine pictured cracks tracing through the fragile alliance she had hoped to fashion, and closed her eyes against the frustration that threatened to overwhelm her.
"Yes, you have your answer, do not, quarry mine," whispered Hellbane, as his voice faded. "You are nothing this day, but in time flee terrified, powerless, the tormented soul's wisp."
Yvraine opened her eyes to see the demon gone, and the Eldari around her already falling into arguments of recrimination, or shedding sorrowful tears of loss. For herself she tasted only ashes. There would be no unity won this day, and out there, somewhere, the thing still hunted her. The Vizark placed a hand upon Yvraine's shoulder and she looked into his expressionless mask. "Come," he said, voice weak and hoarse from the recent resurrection. "The Whispering God still has need of us." Yvraine nodded, and together they turned to leave the clearing, to salvage what they could of this dreadful day. The Inari were not defeated yet, thought Yvraine fiercely, and the souls within her clamoured in agreement. Yennead would still wake, and Slaanesh would still fall. This, she vowed, no matter the cost. End quote. Wild men caught and sang the sun in flight. Do not go gentle into that good night. Brave men, grave men near death who see with blinding sight. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and buffet. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. The Phoenix Rising. That is what this expansion is called. Many believed it would be a tale of Ahra, who may be Draza, or a new Phoenix Lord, like Hosideh or Amon-Harakt, or the rise or fall of Janazar. But no, this was thinking too small, thinking like a monkey, like a human. Ever did the Eldar speak in analogy and riddles, so this approach is utterly congruent with the race invoked. But no, it is not that simple or prosaic. The rise of the Phoenix. The bird of fire shall take flight. The Eldar have been a state of self-imposed mourning for over 11,000 years and more. Their empire destroyed, their culture in tatters, their race seemingly on the brink of destruction. The mighty Eldari who ruled the galaxy for millions of years seemed defeated. For their mourning, their acceptance of fate, their desolation, was a perfectly natural reaction to what had befallen their people, and they are ever poets at heart. But they are a race that was built, trained, equipped, and charged to fight war on a scale that present races of the galaxy cannot even conceive. The Eldar are war. They are a mighty warhawk, a bird of fire. They always knew how to recover. They always had the tools at their disposal. The birthing vats of the Drakari are Eldari technology. Number of births are literally unimportant when you can generate warriors on a whim. In the Maiden Worlds, the Exodites now flock to craft world banners. Power? Their power is lessened, but their technology is so advanced it was the bane of Catan and silvered undead hordes alike. They can steal stars and move planets. Their power was but slumbering. As the Yannari began the drumbeat, so has it been taken up across the galaxy, for the Eldar heart is throwing off the shroud of self-pity and defeat. And that fiery bird, the Phoenix, the thing that symbolizes their entire race, the Eldari, entire, it is rising. The rising of the Phoenix is the rise of the Eldari, and the galaxy had better take care that it is not burnt to cinders in the Phoenix's rise. And you, my father, there on sad height, curse, bless me with your fierce tears, I pray. Rage, rage, against the dying of the light. Poem by Dylan Thomas. Do not go into that good night. I have been Baldermort. I would urge you to purchase this wonderful tome, for the art and the lore, if not for the memories it will elicit in the years to come. It is a worthy book. If you have enjoyed my labours, then please consider liking and subscribing. I will be covering all forms of lore of the Warhammer 40K universe, and would not want you to miss out.